You know someone like this. Maybe it's the coworker who works through lunch every day, stays late every night, and refuses every offer of assistance with a forced smile and an "I've got it handled." Maybe it's your friend who just went through a devastating breakup but insists they're fine, while their entire life falls apart around them. Maybe it's your sibling who lost their job 3 months ago but hasn't told anyone because they don't want to worry people. Or maybe, and this is the hardest one to admit, maybe it's you. Here's what most people get wrong about these individuals. They think it's strength. They think it's admirable independence. They call it resilience, self-sufficiency, the ability to handle anything life throws at them. But what if I told you that this pattern, this compulsive need to do everything alone, has nothing to do with strength? What if I told you it's one of the most damaging psychological patterns a person can develop? What if refusing help isn't protecting you, it's slowly destroying you? The person who never asks for help isn't strong. They're terrified, and their terror has a name. Psychologists call it hyperindependence, and it's not a personality trait. It's a trauma response. It's a survival mechanism that your brain created when you were young, when asking for help meant disappointment or danger or pain. And now, decades later, you're still operating from that same broken blueprint, convinced that needing anyone makes you weak, when the opposite is actually true. Today I'm going to show you exactly why some people would rather suffer in silence than reach out. I'm going to explain the psychological mechanisms that make two simple words, "help me," feel impossible to say. And I'm going to reveal why this pattern, left unchecked, leads to burnout, isolation, and a life half-lived. Because understanding this isn't just interesting psychology. For millions of people, understanding this is the difference between continuing to drown alone and finally learning to let someone throw you a lifeline. Let me start with something that's going to challenge what you believe about independence. We live in a culture that worships the self-made individual. The American dream is built on this idea that if you just work hard enough, if you're just strong enough, if you're just independent enough, you can accomplish anything without help from anyone. We celebrate the entrepreneur who built their empire from nothing. We admire the single parent who works 3 jobs and never complains. We glorify the rugged individualist who needs no one. Here's the problem with that narrative. It's a biological lie. Dr. Matthew Lieberman, a social neuroscience researcher at UCLA, has spent decades studying how the human brain responds to social connection. His research shows something remarkable. The same brain regions that process physical pain also process social pain. When you feel rejected or isolated, your brain experiences it the same way it experiences a broken bone. Social connection isn't a luxury for humans. It's a survival need hardwired into our neurobiology. We are not a species of lone wolves. We never have been. Our evolutionary success as humans came from cooperation, from tribes, from mutual dependence. A human baby is completely helpless for years, far longer than any other primate. We survived as a species because we learned to help each other, not because we learned to do everything ourselves. So when someone tells you that needing help is weakness, they're not just wrong about psychology, they're wrong about basic human biology. But if dependence is natural and healthy, why do some people develop this compulsive pattern of refusing all help? Dr. Pia Mellody, who pioneered work on codependency and childhood trauma, explains that hyperindependence typically develops in childhood environments where dependence was unsafe. Maybe the child had parents who were emotionally unavailable. Maybe they had to parent their own parents, a pattern called parentification. Maybe every time they expressed a need, they were punished or ignored or made to feel like a burden. These children learn a set of devastating lessons that their adult brain still believes. Lesson 1. My needs don't matter. Lesson 2. Asking for help makes things worse. Lesson 3. I am only safe if I need nothing from anyone. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're survival programs running in the background of every decision, every relationship, every moment of struggle. The child who learned that crying brought anger instead of comfort becomes the adult who would rather collapse from exhaustion than admit they're overwhelmed. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading trauma researchers, explains in his groundbreaking book, The Body Keeps the Score, That trauma isn't just about what happened to you, it's about what didn't happen that should have. When a child's legitimate needs for care, protection, and emotional support go unmet repeatedly, their nervous system adapts. They stop reaching out. They stop expecting help. They stop believing that other people can be sources of safety and support. And this adaptation, this hyper-independence, gets mistaken for maturity when it's actually a scar. Let's talk about what's really happening in the brain of someone who can't ask for help. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory gives us insight into this. Your nervous system has different states. When you feel safe, your social engagement system is active. You can connect, communicate, ask for what you need. But when your nervous system perceives threat, you shift into fight or flight or freeze responses. For people with hyperindependence, asking for help triggers the threat response. Their nervous system interprets vulnerability as danger. This means that when they're struggling and someone offers help, their body doesn't experience relief. It experiences alarm. Their heart rate increases, their muscles tense, their brain floods with stress hormones. To them, accepting help doesn't feel like receiving support. It feels like losing control, like becoming vulnerable to attack, like stepping into danger. So they refuse. Not because they don't need help, but because their nervous system is screaming that accepting help is unsafe. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability adds another layer to understanding this pattern. She spent years studying shame, and she discovered something critical. People who struggle to be vulnerable almost always carry deep shame about having needs. They believe that needing help means something is fundamentally wrong with them. They've internalized the message that independence equals worth and dependence equals defectiveness. So every time they have a need, they don't just feel uncomfortable, they feel ashamed of their own humanity. The fear of rejection plays a massive role in this pattern. Dr. Guy Winch, who studies emotional first aid, explains that for hyper-independent people, asking for help and being rejected isn't just disappointing. It's confirmation of their worst fear, that they are alone, that no one actually cares, that they were right all along to never ask. The potential pain of that rejection is so intense that they calculate it's safer to never ask at all. They'd rather guarantee their isolation than risk having it confirmed by someone else's rejection. Let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out. Sarah is a 34-year-old marketing executive. She's successful, respected, the person everyone turns to for advice. Last year, her mother was diagnosed with cancer. Sarah took on all the responsibilities, managing doctor appointments, medications, her mother's finances, all while working full-time. Her friends offered to help. Her siblings offered to help. Her boss offered flexibility. Sarah refused everything. "I've got it," she said. 6 months later, Sarah had a panic attack so severe she ended up in the emergency room. The doctor's diagnosis? Extreme stress and exhaustion. Sarah's response? She felt ashamed that her body had given up on her. This is the cost of hyperindependence, and it's higher than most people realize. First, there's the physical toll. Dr. John Cacioppo's research on loneliness shows that chronic social isolation, which is what hyperindependence creates, has the same health impact as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and early death. When you refuse help, when you carry everything alone, your body pays the price in measurable biological ways. Second, there's the emotional cost. Dr. Emma Sapala at Stanford University has studied the relationship between self-compassion and mental health. She found that people who can't ask for help experience significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety. They're in a constant state of stress because they're trying to be superhuman. They never rest. They never let their guard down. They never experience the relief that comes from sharing a burden. The result is chronic emotional exhaustion that they mask with competence. Third, there's the relationship cost, and this one is particularly cruel. Dr. John Gottman, who has studied relationships for over 40 years, discovered something counterintuitive. The strongest relationships aren't built when everything is going well. They're built during moments of vulnerability and repair. When you ask for help and someone shows up for you, that creates a bond that success never can. But hyper-independent people never create these bonding moments. They show up for everyone else, but never let anyone show up for them. Over time, their relationships become one-sided. People feel shut out, unnecessary, even unwanted. Here's what makes this particularly painful. Hyper-independent people often feel deeply resentful. They look around and think, "Why doesn't anyone help me? Why am I always the one giving?" But they've constructed their entire life to make help impossible. They've trained everyone around them that offering help will be rejected. They've created relationships where they're the helper, but never the helped. And then they feel angry and abandoned by the very isolation they've engineered. Dr. Harriet Lerner calls this the martyr complex, where you create your own suffering and then blame others for not preventing it. The question everyone asks is, if this pattern is so damaging, why don't people just change? Dr. Gabor Mate, who specializes in trauma and addiction, explains that these patterns persist because they once served a genuine survival function. The child who learned to be hyper-independent wasn't making a mistake. They were adapting brilliantly to a difficult environment. The problem is that the brain doesn't automatically update when circumstances change. The nervous system that learned asking equals danger when you were 5 is still running that program when you're 35, even though the danger is long gone. Dr. Peter Levine, who developed somatic experiencing therapy, emphasizes that these patterns live in the body, not just the mind. You can't think your way out of hyperindependence because it's not a thought problem. It's a nervous system problem. Your body has been trained to respond to vulnerability with a threat response. Changing this requires retraining your body to experience asking for help as safe, and that takes time, patience, and repeated experiences of asking and not being hurt. Let's talk about what this looks like in different areas of life. In romantic relationships, hyper-independent people create a specific dynamic. They appear incredibly self-sufficient, which initially attracts partners who feel secure with someone who has it all together. But over time, the partner feels useless. They want to be needed. They want to feel like they contribute something meaningful to their partner's life. Dr. Sue Johnson, who created emotionally focused therapy, explains that healthy attachment requires vulnerability from both partners. When one person refuses to ever be vulnerable or need anything, the relationship can't achieve true intimacy. It stays surface level, pleasant, but never deep. In friendships, hyper-independence creates what therapists call unbalanced reciprocity. These individuals are everyone's go-to person for support. They listen, they help, they show up. But they never call when they're struggling. They never reach out when they're lonely. They never ask friends to show up for them. Over time, friends start to feel like the relationship is more therapy than friendship. They care about the person, but they don't feel close to them because closeness requires mutual vulnerability. The hyper-independent person ends up with many acquaintances, but few true friends. In work environments, hyper-independence often looks like success. These are the employees who never miss deadlines, never complain, never need supervision. Managers love them. But Dr. Christina Maslach, who created the Maslach Burnout Inventory, has found that these are exactly the people most likely to experience severe burnout. They take on too much. They never delegate. They never say when their workload is unrealistic. And because they appear so competent, no one realizes they're drowning until they break completely. The breakdown is often sudden and severe, a panic attack, a resignation, a collapse. The path out of hyper-independence is not about becoming dependent. Dr. Margaret Mahler's work on separation individuation explains that healthy development involves moving from dependence to independence to interdependence. Interdependence is the mature state where you're capable of functioning independently, but you also recognize that humans thrive through connection and mutual support. You can do things yourself, but you also understand that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that life is easier and richer when you allow yourself to be part of a community of mutual care. So how does someone begin to change this pattern? Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion provides a starting point. Before you can ask others for help, you need to stop judging yourself for needing it. Self-compassion means recognizing that having needs is part of being human. It means talking to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend who's struggling. When you notice yourself thinking, "I should be able to handle this alone," you pause and ask, "Would I tell someone I love that they should handle this alone?" Usually the answer is no. You'd encourage them to reach out. You need to offer yourself that same kindness. The next step is what therapists call graduated exposure. You don't go from never asking for help to asking for major, life-changing help. You start microscopically small. Dr. David Burns, who developed cognitive behavioral techniques for anxiety, recommends starting with requests so small they feel almost silly. Ask someone what time it is. Ask a coworker for their opinion on an email. Ask a friend to recommend a restaurant. These tiny requests do something important. They teach your nervous system that asking doesn't lead to catastrophe. Each small successful request creates a new neural pathway. Slowly, your brain starts learning that vulnerability can be safe. Dr. Dan Siegel's work on neuroplasticity shows us that the brain can change at any age. The patterns formed in childhood aren't permanent. With repeated new experiences, you can literally rewire your brain's response to vulnerability. But this requires consistency. One experience of asking for help and having it go well won't erase decades of conditioning. You need many repetitions. You need to practice asking until it starts feeling less terrifying, until your body begins to relax around vulnerability instead of tensing up. Another crucial element is learning to recognize what Dr. Tara Brach calls the trance of unworthiness. Many hyper-independent people carry a deep unconscious belief that they're not worthy of receiving care. They believe they need to earn love through usefulness. They think their value comes from what they give, not from who they are. Breaking this pattern requires recognizing that your worth isn't conditional. You don't have to be perfect or helpful or independent to deserve care. You deserve care simply because you're human, simply because you exist. Finding the right people to practice vulnerability with matters immensely. Dr. Brené Brown emphasizes that vulnerability without boundaries is not healthy vulnerability. You don't practice asking for help with people who have proven themselves unsafe. You start with people who have shown up consistently, who have demonstrated that they care about you, who have earned your trust through their actions. These are the people you can begin testing small vulnerabilities with. And when they respond well, when they show up for you, you allow that experience to sink in. You let your nervous system register that this is what safe connection feels like. Therapy can be transformative for hyper-independent people, but they often resist it for obvious reasons. Going to therapy means admitting you need help with your inability to ask for help. The irony isn't lost on therapists. Dr. Irvin Yalom, one of the most respected therapists of our time, writes that the therapeutic relationship itself becomes the healing experience. The therapist becomes a safe person who consistently shows up, who doesn't judge you for having needs, who doesn't abandon you when you're vulnerable. Over time, this relationship teaches your nervous system that dependence doesn't always lead to disappointment or danger. Some people find that support groups specifically for this pattern can be helpful. When you're in a room with others who struggle with the same thing, the shame starts to dissolve. You realize you're not uniquely damaged. You're not the only person who finds vulnerability terrifying. You hear stories from people who have begun changing this pattern, and it starts to feel possible for you too. The group itself becomes a practice ground for asking for what you need in an environment designed to be safe. Let me be clear about something important. Changing this pattern doesn't mean you become needy or dependent or incapable. Dr. Albert Bandura's research on self-efficacy shows that true confidence comes from knowing you're capable, but also knowing when to leverage resources and support. The most successful people aren't the ones who do everything alone. They're the ones who build strong teams, who ask for advice, who recognize their limitations and bring in expertise where they need it. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's strategic intelligence. The real strength, the kind of strength that's sustainable over a lifetime, is the ability to be honest about your humanity. It's the courage to say, "I'm struggling and I need support." It's the wisdom to recognize that you don't have to carry everything alone. It's the maturity to understand that connection requires mutual vulnerability, not one-sided caregiving. Dr. Carl Rogers, one of the founders of humanistic psychology, believed that the goal of psychological health was becoming a fully functioning person, someone who is authentic, who lives in harmony with their real experiences, who doesn't hide behind masks of perfection or invulnerability. If you're someone who recognizes yourself in this description, If you've spent years carrying everything alone, if asking for help feels like admitting defeat, I want you to hear this. Your hyperindependence was brilliant when you developed it. It protected you. It kept you safe when the world felt dangerous. Your younger self deserves negativity for that adaptation. But you're not that child anymore. The armor that once protected you is now suffocating you, and you have the power to begin taking it off, piece by piece, breath by breath. The journey out of hyperindependence is not dramatic. There's no moment where everything suddenly changes. It's a slow, gentle process of learning that you can need someone and still be strong, that you can ask for help and still be capable, that you can be vulnerable and still be safe. It's learning that true strength isn't the ability to carry the weight of the world alone. True strength is having the courage to set some of that weight down and let someone help you carry it. Because at the end of the day, we're all just humans trying to navigate a complicated world. And humans weren't designed to do it alone. We need each other. Not because we're weak, but because we're human. And being human means having needs, experiencing struggles, and sometimes, just sometimes, having the profound courage to look at another person and say, I can't do this by myself. Will you help me? That moment, the moment you finally ask, isn't the moment you become weak. It's the moment you finally become free. Your worth was never measured by how little you need from others. Your strength was never proven by how much you could carry alone. And your value isn't determined by your ability to never ask for help. You matter because you exist. You deserve care because you're alive. And asking for what you need isn't taking something from the world. It's finally allowing yourself to be part of the give and take that makes us human. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And it might just be the most courageous thing you ever do.